NCERT presents Audiobook of Science for Class 6 entitled Science 1. This is the Lesson 3, title Fibre to Fabric, from page 18 to 25. Page 18. Fibre to Fabric. Paheli and Bujo won the first prize in a science quiz competition held at their school. They were very excited and decided to use the prize money to buy clothes for their parents. When they saw a large variety of cloth material, they got confused. Figure 3.1. The shopkeeper explained that some clothes or fabrics were cotton and some were synthetic. He also had woolen mufflers and shawls. There were many silk saris as well. Paheli and Bujo felt very excited. They touched and felt these different fabrics. Finally, they bought a woolen muffler and a cotton sari. After their visit to the cloth shop, Paheli and Bujo began to notice various fabrics in their surroundings. They found that bed sheets, blankets, curtains, tablecloths, towels, and dusters were made from different kinds of fabrics. Even their school bags and the gunny bags were made from some kind of fabric. They tried to identify these fabrics as cotton, wool, silk, or synthetic. Can you also identify some fabrics? 3.1. Variety in fabrics. Activity 1. Visit a nearby tailoring shop. Collect cuttings of fabrics left over after stitching. Feel and touch each piece of fabric. Now, try to label some of the fabrics as cotton, silk, wool, or synthetic after asking for help from the tailor. Do you wonder what these different fabrics are made of? When you look at any fabric, it seems a continuous piece. Now, look at it closely. What do you notice? As shown in figure 3.2. This is the figure 3.2 enlarged view of a piece of fabric. Activity 2. Select a piece of cotton fabric you labeled in Activity 1. Now try to find a loose thread or yarn at one of the edges and pull it out. Figure 3.3. Page 19. If no loose yarns are visible, you can gently pull one out with a pin or a needle. We find that a fabric is made up of yarns arranged together. What are these yarns made of? Here is a figure 3.3 which shows pulling a thread from a fabric. 3.2. Fibre. Activity 3. Take out a yarn from a piece of cotton fabric. Place this piece of yarn on the table. Now, press one end of the yarn with your thumb. Scratch the other end of the yarn along its length with your nail as shown in figure 3.4. Do you find that at this end, the yarn splits up into thin strands? Figure 3.5. Figure 3.4 shows splitting the yarn into thin strands. Figure 3.5 shows yarn split up into thin strands. You might have observed something similar when you try to thread a needle. Many a time, the end of the thread is separated into a few thin strands. This makes it difficult to pass the thread through the eye of the needle. The thin strands of thread that we see are made up of still thinner strands called fibers. Fabrics are made up of yarns and yarns are further made up of fibers. Where do these fibers come from? The fibers of some fabrics such as cotton, jute, silk and wool are obtained from plants and animals. These are called natural fibers. Cotton and jute are examples of fibers obtained from plants. Wool and silk fibers are obtained from animals. Wool is obtained from the fleece of sheep or goat. It is also obtained from the hair of rabbits, yak and camels. Silk fiber is drawn from the cocoon of silkworm. For thousands of years, natural fibers were the only ones available for making fabrics. Bujo has seen in the museums items like the one shown here. These were worn by warriors. He wants to know if these are made of some kinds of fiber. Page 20. In the last 100 years or so, fibers are also made from chemical substances which are not obtained from plant or animal sources. These are called synthetic fibers. Some examples of synthetic fibers are polyester, nylon and acrylic. 3.3. Some plant fibers. Cotton. Have you ever made wicks for oil lamps? What do you use for making these wicks? This cotton wool is also used for filling mattresses, quilts or pillows. Take some cotton wool, pull it apart and look at its edges. What do you observe? The small, thin strands that you see are made up of cotton fibers. Where does this cotton wool come from? It is grown in the fields. Cotton plants are usually grown at places having black soil and warm climate. Can you name some states of our country where cotton is grown? The fruits of the cotton plant, that is cotton balls, are about the size of a lemon. After maturing, the balls burst open and the seeds covered with the cotton fibers can be seen. Have you ever seen a cotton field that is ready for picking? It looks like a field covered with snow, as shown in figure 3.6. From these balls, cotton is usually picked by hand. Fibers are then separated from the seeds by combing. This process is called ginning of cotton. Ginning was traditionally done by hand. Figure 3.7. These days, machines are also used for ginning. Figure 3.6 shows field of cotton plants. Figure 3.7 shows ginning of cotton. Jute. Jute fiber is obtained from the stem of the jute plant, as shown in figure 3.8. It is cultivated during the rainy season. In India, jute is mainly grown in West Bengal, Bihar and Assam. The jute plant is normally harvested when it is at flowering stage. The stems of the harvested plants are immersed in water for a few days. The stems rot and fibers are separated by hand. Figure 3.8. A jute plant. Page 21. To make fabrics, all these fibers are first converted into yarns. How is it done? 3.4. Spinning cotton yarn. You can try making cotton yarn yourself. Activity 4. Hold some cotton wool in one hand. Pinch some cotton between the thumb and forefinger of the other hand. Now, gently start pulling out the cotton while continuously twisting the fibers, as shown in figure 3.9. Are you able to make a yarn? The process of making yarn from fibers is called spinning. In this process, fibers from a mass of cotton wool are drawn out and twisted. This brings the fibers together to form a yarn. A simple device used for spinning is a hand spindle, also called tuckli, figure 3.10. Another hand-operated device used for spinning is charkha, figure 3.11. Use of charkha was popularized by Mahatma Gandhi as part of the independence movement. He encouraged people to wear clothes made of homespun yarn termed as khadi and shun imported cloth made in the mills of Britain. To popularize and promote khadi, the Government of India constituted a body called Khadi and Village Industries Commission in 1956. Spinning of yarn on a large scale is done with the help of spinning machines. After spinning, yarns are used for making fabrics. Figure 3.9 shows making yarn from cotton. Figure 3.10 shows a tuckli. Figure 3.11 shows charkha. 3.5 Yarn to fabric. There are many ways by which fabrics are made from yarns. The two main processes are weaving and knitting. Weaving. In activity 2, you might have noticed that a fabric is made up of two sets of yarns arranged together. The process of arranging two sets of yarns together to make a fabric is called weaving. Let us try to weave some paper strips. Activity 5. Take two sheets of paper of different colors. Cut square pieces of length and width equal to 30 cm from each sheet. Now fold both the sheets into half. On one sheet, draw lines as shown in the figure 3.12a and on the other as shown in figure 3.12b. Page 22. Cut both the sheets along the dotted lines and then unfold. Weave the strips one by one through the cuts in the sheet of paper as shown in figure 3.12c. Figure 3.12d shows the pattern after weaving all the strips. In a similar manner, two sets of yarn are woven to make a fabric. The yarns are much thinner than our paper strips. Of course, weaving of fabric is done on looms. As shown in figure 3.13, the looms are either hand-operated or power-operated. Figure 3.12 shows weaving with paper strips. 3.13 shows hand loom. Knitting. Have you noticed how sweaters are knitted? In knitting, a single yarn is used to make a piece of fabric, as shown in figure 3.14. Have you ever pulled the yarn from a torn pair of socks? What happens? A single yarn gets pulled out continuously as the fabric gets unraveled. Socks and many other clothing items are made of knitted fabrics. Knitting is done by hand and also on machines. Figure 3.14 shows knitting. Here is a picture of Paheli. She wants to know if you have seen any fabrics that are made of the fibers on the outer covering of coconut. What are these fibers normally used for? Page 23. Weaving and knitting are used for making different kinds of fabric. These fabrics are used for a variety of clothing items. 3.6. History of clothing material. Have you ever wondered what materials people used in ancient times for clothes? It appears that in those times, people used the bark and big leaves of trees or animal skins and furs to cover themselves. After people began to settle in agricultural communities, they learned to weave twigs and grass into mats and baskets. Vines, animal fleece, or hair were twisted together into long strands. These were woven into fabrics. The early Indians wore fabrics made out of cotton that grew in the regions near the river Ganga. Flax is also a plant that gives natural fibers. In ancient Egypt, cotton as well as flax were cultivated near the river Nile and were used for making fabrics. In those days, stitching was not known. People simply draped the fabrics around different parts of their body. Many different ways of draping fabrics were used. With the invention of the sewing needle, people started stitching fabrics to make clothes. Stitched clothes have gone through many variations since this invention. But is it not amazing that even today, sari, dhoti, lungi or turban is used as an unstitched piece of fabric? Just as there is a large variety in the food eaten all over our country, a large variety exists also in fabrics and clothing items. Here, step-by-step process is shown, starting from cotton rolls, with the process of ginning becomes fiber, with the process of spinning becomes yarn. And yarn can be made fabric by knitting or weaving. Keywords: cotton wool, fabric, fiber, knitting, spinning, weaving, yarn. Summary: there is a variety of clothing material or fabric such as cotton, silk, wool and polyester. Page 24. Fabrics are made from yarns, which in turn are made from fibers. Fibers are either natural or synthetic. Cotton, wool, silk and jute are some natural fibers, while nylon and polyester are some examples of synthetic fibers. Fibers like cotton and jute are obtained from plants. The process of making yarn from fibers is called spinning. Fabric from yarns is made by weaving and knitting. Exercises. 1. Classify the following fibers as natural or synthetic: nylon, wool, cotton, silk, polyester, jute. 2. State whether the following statements are true or false. A. Yarn is made from fibers. B. Spinning is a process of making fibers. C. Jute is the outer covering of coconut. D. The process of removing seed from cotton is called ginning. E. Weaving of yarn makes a piece of fabric. F. Silk fiber is obtained from the stem of a plant. G. Polyester is a natural fiber. 3. Fill in the blanks. A. Plant fibers are obtained from blank and blank. B. Animals' fibers are blank and blank. 4. From which parts of the plant cotton and jute are obtained? 5. Name 2 items that are made from coconut fiber. 6. Explain the process of making yarn from fiber. Suggested projects and activities. 1. Visit a nearby handloom or power loom unit and observe the weaving or knitting of fabric. 2. Find out if any crop is grown in your region for obtaining fiber. If yes, what is it used for? 3. India has been a major producer of cotton and its fabric. India exports cotton fabrics and items to many other countries. Find out how it helps us. Page 25. 4. Do you know that famous Sufi saint and poet Kabir was a weaver? Find out about his life and teachings. 5. You can do an activity to identify the yarns of a fabric under the supervision of your teacher or parents. Pull out 6 to 8 yarns from the fabric. Hold one end of the yarn with a tongue and bring the other end over the flame of a candle. Observe carefully. Do the yarns shrink away from the flame? Do the yarns melt or burn? What type of odor is given off? Note down your observations. If these are cotton yarns, they burn but do not shrink or melt. The burning yarns gives an odor similar to burning paper. The silk yarn shrinks away from the flame and burns but does not melt. It has the odor of charred meat. The wool yarn also shrinks and burns but does not melt. It has a strong odor of burning hair. The synthetic yarns shrink and burn. They also melt and give out an odor similar to burning plastics. Here, Bujo knows that burning of cotton yarn gives an odor similar to burning paper. He is wondering if he can assume that paper is also made from plants. The chapter 3 of total 16 chapters of the book ends here.